Here's something nobody warns you about. At some point, you're going to get the thing you wanted, and when you do, it won't fix what you think it will. There's a story about a guy who spent 15 years building his company, gave up relationships, sleep, his entire 20s, and the day he finally sold it, the day everything he worked for became real, he sat alone in his car in the parking lot and just sat there. And the first thought that came to his head wasn't gratitude, it wasn't relief, it was, okay, what do I do? What do I chase next? And the reason that story is so unsettling isn't because it's rare. It's because somewhere inside you already know that feeling. Maybe you have felt it after a smaller win, a grade, a goal, a moment you'd been waiting for. That silence right after, that strange emptiness where the happiness was supposed to be. This video is about what that silence is and what it might be trying to tell us. We live in a world that's obsessed with the chase. Get the grade, get the job, get the relationship, build the body, and somewhere along the way we absorb this quiet belief that if we just get enough of the right things, something inside us will finally settle. The restlessness will stop, the anxiety will quiet down, life will feel like how it's supposed to feel. Nobody teaches you that belief. Nobody sits you down and says, here's how this works. You just pick it up from the people around you, from the way success is talked about, from every story you've ever been told about someone who made it. And then one day you get something you really wanted and the silence shows up. So the question this video is really asking isn't how to get what you want. It's something much more uncomfortable than that. It's what are you actually chasing? And what do you think it's going to do when you finally catch it? Chapter 1, The Summit. Think about the last thing you really wanted. Not a casual want, not I'd like that someday. Something that actually lived in your head. Something you thought about in the shower before you fell asleep or on your travel to work. Something that felt like if I could just get that, something shifts. You know the thing. Now think about the moment you got it. The email arrived, the result appeared on the screen, the number changed, the person said yes, whatever it was for you, there was a moment where it became real. And something happened in that moment. Or maybe more accurately, something didn't happen. Because the next morning you woke up, you made coffee, showered, got on with the day, and the world looked exactly the same as it did before. The same ceiling above your head, the same face in the mirror, the same thoughts, the same low hum of everything you still have to do, everywhere you still have to be. You checked your phone maybe, looked at the thing again just to confirm that it was real. It was. And then you put the phone down and made breakfast. That's the part nobody talks about. Not the winning, but the morning after the winning. That completely ordinary day where the biggest thing you ever wanted is now just a fact about your life. And life just continues around it like it was never a big deal at all. And it's not just you. Think about athletes who spend their entire careers chasing a championship. People who have given up everything, their bodies, their relationship, entire decades of their lives. And when you hear them talk about the weeks after winning, there's always this moment in the interview where something shifts, where the celebration story ends and something quieter comes in because they don't know who they are without the chase. The thing that defined them is done. And now what? Creators who spent 2 years staring at a follower milestone, refreshing the page the morning after they hit it, and feeling nothing particularly different. Entrepreneurs, students, people who just wanted the promotion, the apartment, all of them are arriving at the same place, the summit, and the strange silence that lives there. That feeling is so universal that psychologists actually gave it a name. They call it the arrival fallacy. The belief that reaching a goal will bring lasting happiness, not because the goal isn't real, not because the achievement doesn't matter, but because the happiness we expect to find at the destination almost never matches what actually shows up. The gap between what we imagine and what we feel, that's the arrival fallacy. And once you know it exists, you start seeing it everywhere. Maybe the strange thing isn't getting what we want. Maybe the strange thing is that we keep expecting it to. Chapter 2, The Promise. Nobody remembers making this deal. There was no moment where you sat down and consciously decided, okay, when I get enough money, I'll finally feel okay. When I get the relationship, I'll finally feel whole. When I get the body, the title, the recognition, then I'll be enough. The belief didn't arrive like a decision. And by the time you noticed it, it had already been there for years. Maybe it starts with praise. Maybe it starts with achievement. Maybe it starts with the first time doing something well that made you feel seen. Something small. And what came with that moment wasn't just happiness. It was something closer to relief. Like for a moment, everything was okay. Like you were okay. And then it faded. And you wanted it again. So somewhere, not in words, not consciously, a pattern starts forming. And the pattern is simple, almost embarrassingly simple. Do the thing, get the feeling fades, do a bigger thing, get the feeling back. Achievement means worth, getting things means relief. Reaching the goal means finally enough. And the reason this pattern is so hard to see is because it works, at least for a while. The praise arrives and you feel it. The goal lands and you feel it. The achievement happens and for a moment, genuinely, something settles. So you don't question it. Why would you? The deal seems fair. You just have to keep holding up your end. You didn't choose that pattern. You just lived it long enough that it started to feel like the truth. And it doesn't stay small, it grows with you. The amazing grades becomes the university becomes the job becomes the salary becomes the lifestyle. The finish line keeps moving forward and you keep moving with it, because somewhere underneath all of it is the same original feeling, the one you first felt when someone looked at what you did and said, wow, that's great, I'm proud of you. You have been chasing that feeling ever since. You just stopped recognizing it. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because you're not alone in this. And the world, once it figures out you're looking for that feeling, is more than happy to help you look. Think about every advertisement you have ever seen. Underneath the product, underneath the offer, underneath whatever they are selling, there is always one message: you're not quite enough yet, not quite successful enough, not quite attractive enough, not quite free enough. But this car, this gym membership, this promotion, this apartment, this might be the thing that finally gets you there. And it's not just advertising. Think about every success story you have ever consumed: the documentary, the interview, the podcast, the movie. They almost always end at the same place: the arrival, the moment of getting. Because that's where the story closes, that's where the credits roll. Nobody makes a documentary about the day after the winning. Nobody follows the athlete into the quiet of the off season. Nobody asks the entrepreneur what the morning felt like 6 months later. So the promise keeps getting reinforced from every direction, every single day. And it starts to feel like a belief and more like just the way things are. But the world can only sell you the promise because part of you already wants to believe it. Society didn't create the belief, it just found something that was already there, something ancient, something human, and learned how to feed it. The promise isn't a modern invention. It's not social media's fault. It's not advertising. It's not hustle culture. It's older than all of those things. And here's what the promise actually says underneath everything: it's not that you'll get what you want, it's that once you do, you'll finally stop wanting. Chapter 3: The Disappearing Finish Line. Here's what nobody tells you about getting what you want: it doesn't stay special. The thing that consumed your thoughts, that lived in your head on your travel to work, and before you fell asleep, becomes ordinary, becomes background, becomes just another fact about your life that you stop noticing. Not because you're ungrateful, not because you're greedy, not because something is wrong with you, because that's what humans do. Think about the salary that changed everything. The one that felt like finally I have security, a different life, and everything. Give it 6 months, a year, and it's just the number that hits your account. You have reorganized your life around it so completely that it now just feels like the floor. Think about the city you always wanted to live in, the one that felt like electric the first time you visited. That feeling of this is where I'm supposed to be. And then you move there, and the coffee shop becomes your coffee shop. The view becomes your commute. The place that once felt like destination becomes just where you live. Think about the relationship, the person you wanted for so long, the one you couldn't stop thinking about, and how somewhere in the quiet of an ordinary day, you realize you can't quite remember the last time you felt that intensity. Not because the love is gone, but because it became your life. And life is mostly like every other day. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. The destination becomes the starting point. The thing that was supposed to change everything becomes the new normal. And here's the strange thing about all of it: when we are far away from a goal, we imagine it as an ending, a final destination, the place where the story closes. But the moment we reach it, it immediately becomes a beginning. The dream city becomes where you buy groceries. The dream job becomes work. The dream relationship becomes everyday life. The destination never stays a destination for very long. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill. The idea that human beings have a baseline level of happiness, and no matter what happens to us, good or bad, we tend to return to it. We adapt, we absorb, we normalize. The treadmill keeps moving, and we keep running, and we never actually get anywhere. That's the concept. Now, here's what's actually terrifying about it: you will adapt to almost every good thing that ever happens to you. Every single one. The promotion, the body, the money, the dream, all of it. Given enough time, it becomes like every other day. Which means the finish line was never fixed. It was never sitting there waiting for you to reach it. Every time you got close to it, it quietly moved. Not because life is cruel, not because you are doing something wrong, but because the moment you arrive somewhere, your brain immediately begins the process of making it normal, of making it not enough, of pointing you towards the next thing. The finish line you have been running towards your entire life was always moving. You just couldn't see it from far away. And if you sit with that long enough, a question starts to form. If every good thing eventually becomes ordinary, if the treadmill never actually stops, then what exactly are we chasing? What are we actually running towards? Most people answer that question by running faster, bigger goals, higher numbers, because if the finish line keeps moving, maybe the solution is to just keep moving with it. But here's another answer, a quieter one, and it's much more unsettling. Maybe the real problem isn't that the finish line moves. Maybe the real problem is what happens when it stops. Chapter 4, Why We Still Chase. Maybe we have been asking the wrong question. The question isn't why we keep wanting more. The question is why we were given the ability to want at all. Think about every meaningful thing humans have ever created. Think about Van Gogh, a man who spent his life trying to paint what he saw in his head and never feeling like he quite got there. Every painting revealing another gap between reality and the thing he was reaching for. Think about every scientist who ever changed how we understand the world. Not the ones who accepted the current answer, the ones who looked at what everyone else had agreed was true and thought something here is wrong, something is missing. There has to be more to this. The entire history of sciences is just that feeling refusing to stay quiet. Think about the explorers who looked at the edge of the known map and couldn't stop wondering what was beyond it. Not because someone told them to go, because something inside them physically couldn't accept that the world ended there. Think about every person who has ever built something from nothing, who looked at the way things were, the way everyone around them had learned to accept things and thought, this isn't good enough. There has to be a better way. The refusal to believe that what exists now is all that can exist. And here's what's strange about all of them. None of them were satisfied. The artist finished one painting and immediately saw his flaws. The scientist answered one question and immediately found three more. The explorer mapped one coastline and immediately looked for the next. The thing we have spent the last 10 minutes treating as a problem, that restlessness, that inability to arrive, that feeling that there has to be something more, was the same thing driving every single one of them. It didn't feel like a gift to them either. It probably felt like exactly like it feels to you, like something that won't let you rest. There has to be something more. That sentence built cities, it crossed oceans, it split atoms, it sent people to the moon. Most of human progress is just that sentence refusing to die. That's not a flaw, that's the whole engine. And now something shifts when you look back at everything we have talked about. The restlessness that makes the summit feel empty. That's the same restlessness that made someone climb the mountain in the first place. The dissatisfaction that moves the finish line, that's the same dissatisfaction that made someone draw a finish line at all. The wanting that never quite goes away, that's the same wanting that built civilizations, wrote symphonies, sent humans to the moon. We have spent this entire video treating desire like the will, the thing that tricks us, the thing that disappoints us, the thing that keeps moving the finish line just before we reach it. But what if it never was the will? What if desire is the most human thing about you? Desire was never broken. Maybe desire was never designed to make us happy. Maybe desire was designed to keep us moving, which changes the question entirely. Because if desire is the engine, then maybe the problem was never the engine. Maybe the problem was where we expected it to take us. Chapter 5, The Real Point. Maybe the problem was never that you wanted things, the promotion, the relationship, the money, the recognition. None of those things were wrong to want. None of them were shallow. None of them were mistakes. The problem was the job we gave them. Money can buy comfort, relationships can create connection, success can open doors, achievement can build confidence. But none of them, not one, can permanently answer the question you were actually asking, because that was never their job. Think about what we actually ask of our goals. We don't just want the salary, we want it to mean we made it. We don't just want the relationship, we want it to mean we are lovable. We don't just want the recognition, we want it to mean we matter. Every destination is quietly carrying a second request underneath it, something much heavier than the goal itself. And the destination almost always delivers on the first request. The salary arrives, the recognition comes. But the second request, the deeper one, stays unanswered because it was always unanswerable from the outside. We keep asking destinations to give us something only a direction can give us. And then we are surprised when we arrive and the question is still there. And that's why achievement can feel so confusing, because part of you got exactly what you wanted and part of you got nothing at all. The goal was real, the feeling you attached to the goal wasn't. So for a moment, you are standing there holding the thing you worked for, wondering why it doesn't feel the way it was supposed to. The people who seem to have figured something out, and I don't mean the people who perform contentment online, I mean the ones who actually seem at ease with their ambition. They are not the ones who stopped wanting, they are the ones who stopped expecting arrival. There's a difference, and it matters. Stopping wanting looks like giving up, like deciding nothing is worth chasing, like shrinking your life down until the disappointment can't reach you. Stopping expecting arrival looks completely different. You still want things, you still chase things, you still set goals and work towards them and feel the pull of the next mountain. But you stop doing it because you believe the summit will finally answer the question. You stop treating your goals like salvation. The climbing becomes the point, not because someone told you to enjoy the journey, but because you genuinely stopped waiting for the destination to start your life. And when that shift happens, quiet as it is, something changes. Not in what you chase, but in why you chase it. The goal stops being a rescue mission. It becomes something lighter than that, something you move towards because it pulls you forward, not because you believe it will finally make you whole. That's a completely different relationship with ambition. And it looks exactly the same from the outside. You're still climbing, just without the weight of expecting the summit to save you. Person standing on top of a mountain, already looking at the next peak, already restless, already moving. I used to think that image was sad. Now I am not so sure. Maybe that person isn't trapped. Maybe that person is just human, built to move, built to reach, built to look at the horizon and think there has to be something more. The problem was never the climbing. The problem was believing the summit would finally make them feel whole. The mountain was never supposed to do that. It was just a mountain. So here's what I think this has all been pointing at. You were never broken. Desire wasn't broken. The promise was. The promise that arrival would fix you, that the right combination of achievements would finally answer the question, that one day, if you got enough of the right things, the restlessness would stop and something would settle and you would feel finally complete. That promise was always a lie, one we all inherited without choosing it. And putting it down doesn't mean stopping. It doesn't mean caring less. It doesn't mean your goals matter less or your ambition was wrong. It just means you stop asking your goals to be responsible for something they were never capable of giving you. The wanting stays, the climbing stays, the reaching stays, just without the promise attached to it. Remember the guy at the beginning? 15 years, everything sacrificed, the company sold, and he's sitting alone in the car in the parking lot feeling nothing. I want to go back to that moment because I think we misread it at the start of this video. We treated that silence like a failure, like something had gone wrong, like the system had broken down and delivered the wrong result. But what if the silence wasn't a failure? What if the silence was just the moment the promise finally ran out? 15 years of believing when I get there, everything changes. 15 years of the promise keeping him moving, keeping him building, keeping him reaching. And then the day it was over, the promise had nothing left to say. But here's what I notice now. He built something, something real, something that didn't exist before he started. Not because the promise was true, but because he moved, because he reached, because something in him refused to believe that what existed was all that could exist. The promise lied about the destination, but it told the truth about the engine. That silence in the car wasn't emptiness, it was just the sound of a man finally putting the promise down. And maybe if we'd known what we know now, the next thought wouldn't have been, okay, what do I chase next? It would have been something quieter than that. Something like, that was worth doing. Not because it fixed me, just because it was worth doing. And maybe that's the only finish line that was ever real.